What if I told you that the secret to saving your first $10,000 was buried inside a dusty cardboard box found in a grandmother's attic in Ohio, tucked between old ration books and a faded handwritten letter from 1947? What if the women of that generation figured out something about money that we've completely forgotten? Something so simple, so beautifully practical, that banks and credit card companies would absolutely hate for you to know. This isn't about stocks. This isn't about crypto. This is about a little paper envelope, and it might change the way you think about money forever. Stay with me until the very end, because what's coming will surprise you. And if this speaks to you, subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with every woman in your life who deserves financial peace, security, and freedom. It was 1947, and Susan had exactly $11 in her coat pocket. She was standing in the checkout line at the A&P grocery store in Cincinnati, and she was counting every single cent. The war had just ended, and America was still finding its footing. Inflation had crept up like a slow tide. Prices had risen nearly 14% in just 1 year. Families didn't have the luxury of credit cards or online banking. There were no apps telling you how much you'd spent on coffee this week. Money was real, physical, tangible. You could feel it leave your hand when you spent it. Susan's husband had just come home from overseas, and the factory job paid barely enough. But Susan had a system. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't complicated. It was just 5 small envelopes sitting on the kitchen counter, and that system was quietly changing everything. She had learned it from her mother, who had learned it during the Great Depression, and in a country still healing from war, those envelopes were a lifeline. What Susan didn't know yet was that her simple method would one day be rediscovered and would go on to help millions of people across generations save money they never thought they could. Fast forward to today and meet Jennifer. She's 38, lives in suburban Atlanta, earns $54,000 a year, and somehow still feels broke by the 25th of every month. Jennifer has a budgeting app on her phone, a high-yield savings account she opened last January, and a journal she bought to track her spending. She hasn't written in it since February. Sound familiar? The problem isn't that Jennifer doesn't make enough money. The problem is that money today is invisible. When you tap a phone to pay, there's no emotional weight to it. When you swipe a card, your brain doesn't register loss the same way it does with cash. Studies in behavioral economics show that people spend up to 83% more when paying digitally versus using physical cash. 83%. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between financial stress and financial stability. Jennifer doesn't feel her money disappear because she never really holds it. And that's exactly what the women of the 1940s understood that we have completely forgotten. They didn't have a choice but to be intentional. Their method wasn't a trend, it was survival. And it worked. So what exactly is the envelope rule, and why is it still relevant in 2024? The system is almost embarrassingly simple. You take your paycheck, you divide it into cash, and you place that cash into labeled envelopes, one for each spending category. When the envelope is empty, the spending stops. No exceptions, no borrowing from next week, no just this once. That's it. That's the whole system. But don't let its simplicity fool you, because inside that simplicity is one of the most powerful behavioral psychology tricks ever discovered. It was used by working-class American households throughout the 1940s, 1950s, and into the 1960s. Women like Susan, Barbara, and Margaret ran entire family budgets this way, not because a financial advisor told them to, but because reality demanded it. And here's the twist that nobody talks about. The women who used this system weren't just surviving. Many of them were quietly building savings that their own children wouldn't discover until decades later. There were women who passed away and left behind $15,000, $20,000, even more, saved penny by penny in envelopes and coffee cans and shoeboxes. Real wealth, built without a financial degree, built with nothing but discipline and 5 little envelopes. Here's where the psychology gets really interesting. And this is the part that modern finance experts are just now starting to understand. When you physically see your money, your brain behaves differently. Neuroscientists call this the pain of paying. When cash leaves your hand, the same region of your brain that processes physical pain is activated. That's not a metaphor. That's actual neurological activity. But when you swipe a card or tap a phone, that pain signal is dramatically reduced. Your brain barely notices the loss. This is why the envelope system works on a level that no budgeting app can replicate. When Linda opens her food envelope on a Tuesday evening and sees only $23 remaining for the rest of the week, something clicks. She doesn't need a notification. She doesn't need an alert. She can see it. She can feel it. That visual scarcity creates a natural, automatic brake on spending. The 1940s housewife didn't need behavioral economics research to tell her this. She lived it. And when you recreate that same physical reality today, the results are just as powerful. Your brain responds to what is real, what is tangible, what you can hold in your hand. And that response can be the difference between another month of financial struggle and your first $1,000 in savings. Now let's talk about the actual setup, because this is where most people get it wrong. The women of the 1940s didn't use 15 categories. They didn't overcomplicate it. They used 5 basic envelopes, and those 5 covered everything that mattered. The first envelope was rent or housing. This was non-negotiable. Roof over the family's head came first, always. The second envelope was groceries and food. Not restaurants, not takeout, just the essentials to feed the family for the week. The third envelope was utilities, electricity, gas, the phone bill. The fourth envelope was savings. Not what was left over, not what felt comfortable. The savings envelope was filled first before anything else. And the fifth envelope was everything else: small household needs, personal care, unexpected small expenses. That's it. 5 envelopes, 5 categories. No confusion, no overthinking. Patricia had been using this system since her mother taught her in 1952, and she told her daughter that the secret wasn't in the number of envelopes, it was in the discipline of never crossing between them. The moment you borrow from one to feed another, the whole system collapses. Keep them separate, keep them sacred, and watch what happens over the next 90 days. Here is the concept that Susan called her most important secret, and it's the one that most modern financial advice still gets backwards. Susan called it paying yourself first. Before rent, before groceries, before the electric bill, before anything else left her household, she put money into the savings envelope. Not whatever was left over at the end of the month, not if there's anything remaining. First, always first. Because Susan understood something that took the financial industry decades to catch up to. If savings come last, savings never happen. There will always be something else: a car repair, a birthday, a sale at the department store, a small emergency. Life will always find a way to consume what's available. So Susan flipped the script. The moment the paycheck arrived, she counted out the savings first, even if it was just $5, even if it was just $10, and she put it in that envelope, and she mentally let it go. It was no longer part of the household budget. It was untouchable, and the rest of the budget had to work around it. This one mental shift from save what's left to spend what's left after saving is what transforms financial struggle into financial progress. And it works whether you're making $30,000 or $130,000 a year. $10,000. For a lot of people, that number feels enormous, almost unreachable. But let's break it down the way Susan would have, sitting at her kitchen table with a pencil and a yellow legal pad. $10,000 divided by 12 months is $833 a month. That's about $208 a week. That's about $30 a day. Now, $30 a day sounds more real, doesn't it? But let's go even further. What if you can't save $30 a day? What if you can only manage $10? That's $3,650 a year. In 3 years, without touching it, without any investment returns, you have $10,000. What about $15 a day? That's $5,475 a year. In under 2 years, you've crossed the finish line. The magic isn't in the amount. The magic is in the consistency. Susan never thought about the full amount. She thought about this week's envelope. She thought about this month's small victory. She broke the mountain into steps, and she focused only on the step in front of her. Nancy, a retired school teacher in Tennessee, used this exact same approach and saved her first $10,000 at age 52, starting with just $40 a week. She told her daughters, "Don't look at the mountain, look at your feet. Just keep walking." Now, here is something that the 1940s generation understood in a way that we have completely lost, and it might be the most uncomfortable truth in this entire video. They lived without credit. Not by choice, necessarily, but credit cards as we know them didn't exist until the late 1950s, and even then they were rare. What this meant in practice was simple. If you didn't have the money, you didn't buy the thing. Period. No exceptions. And here's what's fascinating. When you look at the savings rates of American households in the 1940s and 1950s, they are staggering compared to today. Families were saving 20%, sometimes 25% of their income. Today, the average American saves less than 4%. The credit card industry didn't just give us convenience, it quietly dismantled our relationship with financial discipline. Every time you put something on credit just this once, you are borrowing from your future self. You are taking money from the woman you are trying to become. Deborah learned this the hard way. She spent 6 years paying off credit card debt from her 20s, and she calculated that she had paid nearly $4,200 in interest alone. That was money that could have been her emergency fund, her freedom fund, her $10,000. The envelope system forces you to live within what is real, and that, as uncomfortable as it sounds, is the beginning of real financial power. Let me paint you a picture, a real one, based on documented household budgets from 1947. Mary was a housewife in Columbus, Ohio. Her husband George brought home $62 a week from his job at the auto parts plant. That was their entire world, $62 to cover everything. Here's how Mary divided it. Into the rent envelope, $18. Into the food envelope, $14. Into utilities, $6. Into savings, $8. Every single week, no matter what. Into everything else, $16. That left her with $0 floating around. No money sitting around to be casually spent. And that $8 a week into savings? In 1 year, that was $416. In 5 years, that was $2,080, without interest, without investment, without any financial sophistication. But more importantly, Mary never had a month where she was blindsided by an empty bank account. She always knew exactly where things stood, because she could see it, right there on the kitchen counter. When the food envelope got low mid-week, she didn't panic. She got creative. She stretched the soup. She baked the bread. She made it work. This wasn't deprivation. This was mastery. And the quiet confidence that came from never being financially surprised, that was something no paycheck could buy.
Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds great, but I can't pay my rent with cash envelopes. And you're right, and that's okay. The envelope system doesn't have to be literally physical to work. The principles are what matter, and those principles translate perfectly into the modern world. Here's how women like Emily and Michelle are doing it today. They opened separate checking or savings accounts, one for each category. Some banks let you create sub-accounts or savings buckets with custom labels. Apps like YNAB, Good Budget, and EveryDollar are specifically built to replicate the envelope system, digitally. The key is this: the money in each envelope, whether it's a labeled folder in an app or a separate bank account, must be treated as if it has walls around it. The food bucket is for food. The savings bucket is untouchable. The same rules apply. The same discipline applies. The same psychology applies. But here's a pro tip that modern adaptations miss. Once a week, take your phone out of the equation for just 5 minutes. Write down your balances by hand, on paper, with a pen. Because that physical act of writing down numbers, of seeing them in your own handwriting, reconnects you to that old, powerful feeling of money being real. It's a small thing, but small things are exactly what this whole system is built on.
There's one more tool from the 1940s toolkit that doesn't get nearly enough attention, and it might be the simplest, most powerful thing in this entire video. Barbara called it sleeping on it. Today, we call it the 24-hour rule. Here's how it works. Whenever you feel the urge to buy something that isn't on your list, you wait 24 hours before purchasing it. Just one day. You don't say no forever. You just say, not right now. You walk away, you go home, and you live for 24 hours with that desire. And here's what happens, and this is backed by modern psychology research. In 80% of cases, you wake up the next morning and you simply don't want it anymore. The impulse has passed. The emotional spike that made it feel urgent has faded. You realize it was a want, not a need. The 1940s housewife didn't have one-click shopping or Instagram ads designed by algorithms to trigger desire. But she still had emotional spending. She still had the window of the dress shop downtown, or the neighbor's new furniture, or the sale at Woolworth's that felt like an emergency. And the discipline to walk away, to sleep on it, to let the feeling pass, that was her shield. It's yours too. Start practicing the 24-hour pause this week on any unplanned purchase over $20 and watch how much money stays in your envelope. Let's talk about something that sounds boring but is actually one of the most exciting things in personal finance: the power of showing up the same way week after week, month after month. Susan didn't save $10,000 in one dramatic moment. She saved it in $8 increments every single week for years. And compound consistency, not compound interest, but compound consistency, is the force that makes this possible. Here's what most people don't understand. The hardest part of any savings goal is the first 90 days. After that, the habit starts to run on autopilot. Your brain begins to expect it. It stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like simply what you do. Lisa, a single mother of 2 in Phoenix, started her envelope system with just $25 a week going into savings. By month 3, she had $300 saved, her first savings cushion in 4 years. By month 6, she had $650. By month 12, she had $1,300. And something remarkable happened. Somewhere around month 8, she started finding more ways to add to her savings because it had become a source of pride. She started selling things she didn't need. She picked up one extra shift a month. The savings goal had changed from a chore into a mission. That's the transformation that consistency creates. It doesn't just build your bank account, it builds your identity. You stop being someone who can't save and start being someone who does. Before we get to the challenge I have for you, let me save you from the most common mistakes that derail this system in the first few weeks, because knowing them in advance is the difference between success and giving up. Mistake number 1, making too many categories. If you have 12 envelopes, you will lose track and lose motivation. Keep it to 5, maybe 6. Simplicity is the system. Mistake number 2, skipping the savings envelope just this month. This is the single most dangerous mistake. Once you break that rule once, it becomes easier to break it again. The savings envelope is a promise you make to yourself. Treat it that way. Mistake number 3, setting the savings amount too high too fast. Karen started by trying to save $500 a month on a $3,200 take-home income. By week 3, she was raiding her own savings to cover groceries. Start with an amount that is almost too easy. Build the habit first, increase the amount later. Mistake number 4, not having a written plan. A budget in your head is not a budget, it's a wish. Write it down. Every week, look at those numbers. Every week, make it real. And mistake number 5, treating one bad week as a reason to quit. You will have a month where something unexpected hits, and that's okay. That's what the everything else envelope is partially for. Reset, refocus, keep going. Progress is not perfection. I want to issue you a challenge right now, and I want you to take it seriously, because the women who actually do this for 90 days tell me it changes not just their finances, but their entire relationship with money. Here's the challenge. For the next 3 months, 90 days, you are going to implement the envelope system. Week 1, write down your 5 categories and your current income. Assign a dollar amount to each one. Put savings first, even if it's only $20. Week 2, set up your envelopes, physical, digital, or a combination of both. Move money into each category on payday, and do not move it between categories for any reason that isn't a true emergency. Week 3 and beyond. Track your progress every Sunday evening, 5 minutes. Just write down how each envelope is doing. At the 30-day mark, look at what you've saved. At the 60-day mark, celebrate the progress, even if it's small. At the 90-day mark, you will see something you may not have seen in a long time. A savings number that is bigger than it was. A pattern of control. A proof of what you are capable of. Jessica started this challenge after watching a video just like this one. 3 months later, she had $847 in savings, more than she'd had in her account at one time in 5 years. She said, "I didn't change my income, I just changed my relationship with my money." That's the whole point. That's the whole power of this system. Here's what I want to leave with you today, and I want you to really sit with this. Financial freedom doesn't begin with a big raise. It doesn't begin with an inheritance or a lucky investment. It begins with a decision, a quiet, private, powerful decision made at your kitchen table, maybe with a cup of coffee going cold beside you, that you are going to take control of what you have right now, exactly as it is. Susan made that decision in 1947 with $62 a week and 5 paper envelopes, and she built a life of stability, dignity, and genuine security for herself and her family. Mary did it in Columbus. Nancy did it in Tennessee. Lisa did it in Phoenix as a single mom with 2 kids. The method has never changed because human beings haven't changed. We still respond to visual reality. We still spend less when we feel the weight of what we have. We still save more when we treat savings as non-negotiable. The envelope isn't just a budgeting tool, it's a statement of self-respect. It's you saying, I matter enough to protect my own future. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to start. Open 5 envelopes, literal or digital, this week. Put something in the savings one first, and come back and tell me how it goes, because your $10,000 story is already waiting to be written. Now I have one question for you. Drop it in the comments below. What is the very first thing you would do with your first $10,000 saved? Tell me. I read every single one. If this video helped you, please share it with the women in your life who deserve financial peace. Subscribe so you never miss another story like this one. And remember, your $10,000 story is already waiting to be written.